It's a new season of The Liz Wheeler Show. What this show won't be: boring, old, ineffectual commentary. Go tune into Fox if you want the generic political yammering that got us into this mess. Small assumptions allow big lies. So The Liz Wheeler Show will challenge everything. On this show, it's be based or our country dies. What does it mean to be based? Stay tuned.
Welcome everybody to the Liz Wheeler Show. It is good to see everybody. What an exciting weekend. RFK Jr goes full MAGA. Those are words I never thought that I would say, and I am delighted to say them. We are actually living in a very unique time in history. Perhaps every person at every point in history can say that, but think about this particular election cycle. Think about what has happened in the course of the last 3 months. The Democrat establishment kicked Joe Biden out of office. They staged a coup. They installed Kamala Harris undemocratically as a response to an assassination attempt against President Donald Trump, who is running for president, obviously, again. Then we have this, RFK Jr, a Democrat, forming a coalition with Donald Trump. It's Make America Healthy Again, married to Make America Great Again, and I am here for it. What we're going to do on the show today is we're going to talk about RFK defined what MAGA means. You know how the left always pretends that Make America Great Again is some kind of racist, xenophobic, homophobic, hateful type of slogan. Well, RFK actually defined it, and it is hands down the best articulation of what MAGA actually means that I've ever heard. We're going to talk about that. I also want to talk about the speech that RFK made. If you guys have not had a chance to watch this speech in full, I highly recommend that you watch it start to finish. And you know, I'm kind of a clip person. I like to watch the highlights of different things. I don't always have time to watch the 3-hour Joe Rogan interviews, but I like to see the best parts of each thing. Well, this speech by RFK is the exception to that rule. If you have the time, I think it's 48 minutes long, watch the whole thing. We're going to talk about the 2 best lines from the speech, though. They are lines that should go down in history because they are that targeted. They are that chilling. Also, what does this actually mean? We're now 2.5 months before the election happens. I guess if you're using AOC's standards, we're just a matter of weeks before the election because she says the election is won or lost in September, not in November. But is this going to tip Donald Trump over the edge to win? RFK's support here. We're gonna talk about what this means. Also, there's some nuance. RFK Jr did not actually drop out of the race. He's still technically, he didn't suspend his campaign. He's just urging his voters in swing states to vote for Donald Trump to prevent a Kamala Harris presidency. And we're going to talk about what that means for 2028 because it could catapult RFK onto the ballot in a totally different way, something we've never seen before here in America, a real third-party candidate in 2028. We're going to talk about that. We're also talking to my friend and yours, Jason Whitlock. He has some pretty interesting things to say about what this coalition, this marriage between MAGA and MAHA, what this means to him. He'll make that announcement shortly. Don't go anywhere for that. All right, guys, because we believe in spiritual warfare, before we get to all of this, we are going to begin this show with a prayer. St. Michael the Archangel, defend us in battle, be our protection against the wickedness and snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray. And do thou, O Prince of the heavenly host, by the power of God, cast into hell Satan and all the other evil spirits who prowl through the world seeking the ruin of souls. Amen. And you know, we believe in spiritual warfare on this show. How can you not believe in spiritual warfare if you look at the evil that is trying to take hold, not just of our country in a nebulous way, but of our families, of our children, of our religion, of our rights, of our humanity. And so we must acknowledge the reality of that spiritual warfare if we want to defeat it. Today's show is brought to you by First Cup Coffee. Go to firstcup.com. Use my promo code Liz to get 10% off. You guys have given me some really good feedback about your favorite flavors here. And also, one of the things that I like the best about First Cup is they're a based company. They're brave enough to stand by us as we talk about unpopular topics sometimes, at least according to the globalists, on this show. So give them your support in return. Go to firstcup.com. Use my promo code Liz for 10% off. In all the time that we have been alive, the US dollar has always been our primary currency, but that may not be the case much longer. The US dollar is right now facing unprecedented inflation. We all feel this in our wallets and our bank accounts. Our politics is getting increasingly unstable. Just look at outside the DNC. And if that wasn't scary enough, the government is looking to take total control over all your money with a new so-called digital dollar. This is why it's never been more important than to take control of your health. Don't let your life savings become a casualty of failing banks or currency wars. Now is the time to call the only precious metal dealer I trust, American Hartford Gold. They'll show you how to protect your savings, your retirement accounts by diversifying your wealth portfolio with physical gold and silver. With the finest products, amazing customer service, and a buyback commitment, American Hartford Gold has a 5-star rating from thousands of reviews. American Hartford Gold supports content like this that is committed to bringing you the truth. Tell them I sent you. They'll give you up to $15,000 of free silver on your first order. So call them right now. You can click the link in the description of this episode, or you can call 866-996-5172. That's 866-996-5172. Or text my name, Liz, to 998899. Again, the phone number is 866-996-5172, or text Liz to 998899. I never thought that I would speak the words RFK Jr goes full mega, but they give me so much joy to be able to say that today. RFK presented on his X account a definition or how he views the term mega, and it's one of the most brilliant articulations of this movement we are all a part of that I've ever read, so I'm going to read it to you right now. He says what MAGA really means. The phrase has troubled liberals who think it's a call for a return to an America before civil rights, gay rights, and women's rights. But I have a more generous interpretation, one that is truer to my experience of Donald Trump as he is today. Make America Great Again recalls a nation brimming with vitality, with a can-do spirit, with hope and a belief in itself. It was an America that was beginning to confront its darker shadows, could acknowledge the injustice in its past and present, yet at the same time could celebrate its successes. It was a nation of broad prosperity, the world's most vibrant middle class, and an idealistic belief, though not consistently applied, in freedom, justice, and democracy. It was a nation that led the world in innovation, productivity, and technology. And it was the healthiest country in the world. I have talked to many Trump supporters. I've talked with his inner circle. I've talked to the man himself. This is the America they want to restore. Now, does that not give you the chills? Someone on my Instagram account said, oh, it's so funny that 8 years after this slogan was brought, after Trump coined this slogan, it's finally getting a definition. I said, no. It's that this is the articulation of what we have, a best articulation of what we have supported in this movement for the last 8 years. This is what it's always been, condensed into a nice post on X. And I think that's great. I think that's wonderful. I think that it's moving, right? There was a tweet, and I want to bring this up. It's from someone I'm friends with, John Cardillo. He's one of the, I see him every time I go to Florida. He's part of the South Florida crew. There's a whole bunch of conservatives that live down there, and I like him. But he posted this. He said, RFK Jr is a hardcore leftist who is good on 2 issues, public health tyranny and distrust of the deep state. On all else, he's a Dem to the core. Why are conservatives so in love with the guy? Are their standards that low now? And I responded to him on X because I feel that same excitement, that same emotional draw to RFK. Even though I am a Trump supporter and I cannot vote for RFK for president, I feel that same excitement that RFK has instilled in so many people, thousands, hundreds of thousands of people, maybe in millions across the country, because anybody who has had a child who has suffered a vaccine injury, any person who has been ignored, dismissed, neglected, or worse, gaslit by the medical community because of the corruption between big pharma and government agencies like the CDC and the FDA, anybody who has been underserved, and it's worse than underserved. It's not just a lack of access to this care. Anybody who has been gaslit, told that they're crazy for knowing that their health problems have been caused by either pharmaceuticals or food that's essentially poison, and then doctors say, actually, you're the crazy one, you're not suffering what you know you are suffering. Anybody who has experienced that themselves, or who has had a family member experience that, knows that RFK Jr is, I think, barring none, I can't, off the top of my head, and I've actually given this some thought, I can't think of even one other politician, Democrat or Republican, who we can look to and say, this person gets it. This person understands what Big Pharma has done to our country. This person not only understands the revolving door between the CDC and the FDA to Big Pharma, but also understands that Big Pharma wouldn't be as damaging if it weren't for big food setting all of our bodies up to be vulnerable to the negative effects of Big Pharma. And RFK, of all politicians out there, actually seems like a true advocate. And let me tell you, that resonates emotionally big time with people who've experienced this. And it's not an isolated experience. It's not, oh, somebody's second cousin's wife's brother's son. No. This is an increasingly common story in the United States of America. That's why conservatives are so excited about this, including me. I wrote an article on blaze.com maybe 2-3 months ago saying I like RFK a lot, but I can't vote for him for president of the United States because A, he's just a spoiler and he wouldn't win, which he also acknowledged in his speech in which he endorsed Trump, but also because he is far leftist on a lot of other issues. That remains true. None of that's untrue. But we are entering a period of American politics unlike anything that we've ever experienced before, where coalitions are beginning to form. It's actually a little bit more like European politics than it is traditional American politics. We used to have a system where it was Democrat and Republican, this binary choice between two parties, and you were either in agreement with Democrat values or you were in agreement with Republican principles. That's no longer the case. The people on the left and the people on the right, there's a variety of views that are categorized as leftist views and a variety of philosophies that are categorized as right-wing policies. But people within the Republican Party don't actually all believe the same thing. Take Israel and Hamas and the Palestinians. There's a pretty big disagreement among Republicans about who's right, who's wrong, and what the role of America should be in that particular area of the world. Same with Democrats. There are establishment Democrats who are pro-Israel, and there are radical Democrats, the Marxist Democrats, who are very pro-Hamas. Just look outside the DNC. There's a big variety, a growing variety of viewpoints underneath these two umbrellas that can no longer be represented by just the Democrat label or the Republican label, and we are entering into a new season of American politics, I think, based on what RFK announced, because RFK Jr. did not actually suspend his campaign. He did not drop out of the race at all. He said he's forming a unity ticket with Donald Trump. What does this mean? A unity ticket means RFK Jr. is encouraging his voters who live in swing states to vote for Donald Trump and not for him in order to prevent a Kamala Harris presidency. RFK Jr. does not want Kamala to be president. Who among us does? None of us do. I want to show you, though, two of the lines that RFK presented in his speech that, if our history books and history teachers were honest, these lines should go down in history. These are two of the most insightful, searing indictments of the Democrat Party that someone from within their own party, I think, has ever delivered. Take a look at this.
I began this journey as a Democrat, the party of my father, my uncle, the party which I pledged my own allegiance to long before I was old enough to vote. As you know, I left that party in October because it had departed so dramatically from the core values that I grew up with. It had become the party of war, censorship, corruption, big pharma, big tech, big ag, and big money. When it abandoned democracy by canceling the primary to conceal the cognitive decline of the sitting president. And I'll just take a moment to ask you to consider the many ways that your institutions have abdicated this really sacred responsibility, the duty of a free press, to safeguard democracy and to challenge always the party in power. Instead of maintaining that posture of fear, skepticism toward authority, your institutions have made themselves government mouthpieces and stenographers for the organs of power. You didn't alone cause the devolution of American democracy, but you could have prevented it.
He's a statesman. He's so sincere when he's saying that stuff. It doesn't sound like he's just reading words that someone else wrote for him off of a prompter. I mean, you can basically see the smoke coming off the burn of the Democrat Party and of the mainstream press. And his family, by the way, he mentioned the party of his father and the party of his uncle. This is what his family's statement was in reaction to RFK Jr. endorsing Donald Trump. Let me bring this up. This was posted on X by Carrie Kennedy. It's been viewed 35 million times. She goes, statement on Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s announcement today. We want an America filled with hope and bound together by a shared vision of a brighter future. A future defined by individual freedom, economic promise, and national pride. We believe in Harris and Walz. Our brother Bobby's decision to endorse Trump today is a betrayal of the values that our father and our family hold most dear. It's a sad ending to a sad story. And the statement is signed Kathleen Kennedy Townsend, Courtney Kennedy, Carrie Kennedy, Chris Kennedy, and Rory Kennedy. Can you believe that Bobby Kennedy's family would post this, condemning him publicly in this way? Of all the awful, awful families to have, the Kennedys might be the absolute worst. It's also, these names, Kathleen Kennedy, Courtney, Carrie, Chris, Rory, nobody even knows the names of these people. The only name that we're familiar with, besides Kennedy, of course, is Bobby's. Because Bobby's life work has actually been beneficial to humanity, despite snobby family members who are willing to throw him under the bus because of a political disagreement. It's absolutely, just makes us, by the way, like RFK Jr. more and understand that his family is an example of the corruption of the Democrat Party. RFK also made kind of a cryptic, I would call it a teaser, it's not really an announcement, a cryptic announcement or a cryptic teaser. He said that President Trump is set to either invite or announce more Democrats, maybe Democrats like him, who are potentially going to be part of his campaign, maybe even his administration. And he didn't say who these Democrats would be. I have my speculation about who they would be. So we have Elon Musk, of course, who's already endorsed Donald Trump entirely during that X Spaces with Donald Trump. He's also donating an incredible amount of money. But these are some of the Democrats that I suspect or expect Donald Trump will announce to be part of his campaign. Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard recently was designated as a domestic terrorist, according to the TSA. She had her boarding pass stamped with a quadruple S, SSSS, which means that she's automatically selected not just for more security or more screening like I am every time I go to the airport, but she had undercover TSA agents following her, including bomb-sniffing dogs. Like 7 federal agents would follow her on every single flight. Why? Because she criticized the intelligence apparatus of the United States and the Democrats and the corruption between the two. So I suspect Tulsi will be part of it. She was a Democrat. I think probably technically she's an independent now, but she's certainly someone who understands what RFK articulates, that the Democratic Party is broken. I also suspect that Joe Manchin will be part of this coalition. Joe Manchin, for a hot second, considered running for president as an independent in order, I guess, to spoil. I mean, you can't really run as an independent without understanding that you're a spoiler. To spoil for Joe Biden because he thought Joe Biden was A, mentally unfit, and B, corrupt. Wouldn't it be great? This is just me thinking about all the options. Wouldn't it be great if Donald Trump was also able to bring Fetterman onto that stage? Can you just picture this guy in a big hoodie, big baggy cargo pants, ugly gym shoes that he looks like he fished out of the local pond, walking up onto that stage and saying, I cannot be part of the party that is pro-Hamas, rejecting the Democrat Party and campaigning for Trump. Wouldn't that be great? That, of course, those are sort of what I would call celebrity Democrats. And when I say celebrity Democrats, I still mean politicians. I don't mean Hollywood celebrities. So if Donald Trump is going to bring more Democrat politicians into his campaign, those might be some of them. There's also another way to think about this, though. If you think about the electoral, basically the strategic electoral benefit of certain Democrats from certain states, it might be Democrats that don't have quite the name recognition of a Tulsi or a Manchin or a Fetterman. We could be thinking maybe Jim Webb of Virginia. Jim Webb, you might be like, oh yeah, I remember that guy. He ran for president in 2016, right? What is he about? Maybe. He doesn't have a great amount of name recognition, but he's been around Republican politics. But if Virginia is going to be a swing state in 2024, and it probably is, then Jim Webb being part of Trump's campaign might help Trump in Virginia. The same with Dennis Kucinich. He was actually officially part of RFK's campaign until he wasn't. He's running for Congress in Ohio, but he seems to understand that the Democratic Party is broken. He'd be a pretty significant get. And then, of course, you have the actual celebrities like Aaron Rodgers, maybe Rob Schneider. I don't know, maybe Joe Rogan. I don't know about the actual celebrities here. And then I'll tell you who I expect more than anyone else. This person is both an example of the broken Democrat Party. He was, and I say was, with a little bit of nuance. Is it past tense? Is it present tense? Who's to say? But this person was part of the broken Democratic Party, but also acknowledges the broken Democratic Party, and that is Rod Blagojevich. Those are my predictions, if you will, or just some ideas of who the Trump campaign might bring in if RFK is correct and that he's planning on trying to build a coalition among at least people who think the Democratic Party is broken, even if these people don't align exactly with the Republican platform. And listen, personal anecdote here. Maybe you guys had the same experience, but over the weekend, I got an untold number of texts from people in my life, oftentimes people who are not terribly political. I'm not friends with them because I work in this industry, or I knew them before I was in politics and in media. Mom friends especially, I'm friends with them because, you know, we're moms, we have children the same age. And many of them were either apolitical or they leaned towards RFK. And I got asked the question, what do I do now? Now that RFK is out, I don't like Kamala, but I really don't like Trump either. This is a pattern of text messages that I got. And I wanna address that because I think it's a really important moment in American politics. First of all, I have so much respect for RFK Jr voters because when you are, let me back up and use a personal anecdote. I was raised as a Christian. I was raised as a Catholic. And one of the things that I always tell my parents is, thank you. Thank you for raising me this way, because I sometimes hypothetically worry, it's a stupid thing to worry about, but when you're just analyzing or engaging in self-reflection, I worry that if I had not been raised Catholic, I would have had a hard time overcoming the pride of my own intellect to submit to the will of God. But because I was raised as a Catholic, because that was part of my upbringing, because it was indoctrinated positively into me, I'm so grateful that I got to experience God in all of these formative years of my life, so that when I did become an adult, it was a very natural step to be like, of course, I'm going to continue this relationship, not just the religion of my parents, but the religion, of myself now, the religion that are the choice of myself to have this relationship with God. But I always feel this tremendous amount of respect for people who were raised atheist, who were agnostic, who left the faith and came back, who converted from another faith, because it's hard for me to imagine being able to do that because of my own flawed personality. And I have so much respect for people that have done that or that do that. And the same principle applies politically. RFK voters oftentimes were Democrats. They were loyal to the Democratic Party. They may not share all of the values of the Republican platform, and yet they're able to look at the state of the Democratic Party and the influence that leftism has had on our culture and on our families, and they're able to identify evil. And they're not only able to identify that evil, they're able to say, I must reject that. It's my moral obligation to reject that. And by rejecting that, it really rocks their world. It's really a rug pulled out from under them type of moment where they have to, with a tremendous amount of courage, step out and away from what they are used to. Step out away from the foundation of how they even viewed themselves. And I have so much respect for that. And I think that applies to most RFK voters. And I'm religious, of course, obviously. You guys know this. I share this often. So I believe that being able to acknowledge evil and reject it and choose good instead is not just something that has an implication in this life. I believe it's the first step to eternity. So I have a tremendous amount of respect for RFK Jr voters. And I also think it makes it very clear when it should provide some clarity when we, as conservatives, are welcoming these new voters, you know, this new marriage between Make America Healthy Again and Make America Great Again. It should provide some clarity about what choice we are actually facing in this country. This choice between Trump and Kamala. And how, yes, you and I, as conservatives, some of you watching, may be desensitized to the so-called mean tweets from Trump. You may think it's funny. It may not bother you. You may just be so used to it by now that it doesn't register. But I appreciate, sitting here, I appreciate that some people don't like that. I appreciate that some people are turned off by President Trump's past promiscuity. I get that. I am desensitized to that stuff being in politics, but I fully appreciate that. And I appreciate that a lot of RFK voters felt that way about Donald Trump. But even so, Donald Trump, if we are analyzing what's best, not just for ourselves as individuals, but what's best for our families, Donald Trump when he was president, because we know what he'll do, by the way. The Democrats have spent all this time telling us he's going to be a dictator, he's going to be an authoritarian, he's going to take people's rights away. But really, if we step away from the noise of the media and step away from that fear-mongering on social media that the left often presents to us, we actually already know what Trump is going to be like because he's already been the president. We can look back at what he did to see what he's going to be like again. He's not going to be a different person. He's the same person. And we can see that he secured our border, which keeps our families safe. We can see that he reduced unemployment, not just overall, but the lowest unemployment rates in history for Black people and Hispanic people and women and veterans. These are incredible things that he's done. He's given rights back to parents. He's protected free speech. He's kept us and our children out of foreign wars. He's reduced the dependence on hostile foreign countries that then had a grip on us. And while that may seem a little nebulous, a little vague, it's a really big deal when our antibiotic supply is being manufactured in China, which means we can't really tick off China too bad, or else we're going to have an antibiotic shortage here in the United States. Donald Trump made an effort to bring that stuff back here to the U.S. so that we're not in the weaker position in that power struggle with China. You can compare that to Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris is essentially a mean girl. She uses and abuses people for political gain. And I'll give you a concrete example of this. She slept her way into politics and admitted that she did this. I don't say this to gossip. I don't say this to bring something salacious and scandalous and inappropriate into the political discourse. But Kamala Harris had an affair when she was in her 20s with a 60-year-old Willie Brown. And he appointed her then to a position in California, which she got paid for. It was her first step into politics. Once she got appointed to that board, she wrote Willie Brown a letter. He was married at the time, by the way, and said, if you ever speak to me again, then I'm going to ruin your political career. I'm going to use law enforcement to come after you for this, that, and the next. If she did that to someone that she had a sexual relationship with, imagine what she would do to people that she didn't have that bond with. She has proved to use law enforcement to go after her political enemies. She believes in an open border. She refuses to enforce security of our cities. She actually contributed to the Black Lives Matter rioters that torched our cities in the summer of 2020. She encouraged people to pay for the bail so that they could get out of jail after they had committed these crimes. She is so radical on abortion that she believes in all abortions for any reason up until the moment of birth, even gruesome late-term abortions. This woman is dangerous for our family. So you see this contrast between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, even if you're viewing this through the lens of an RFK voter, and you see you can't vote for Kamala Harris because she's dangerous for our families. Donald Trump, you may not like all of his tweets, you may not like all of his demeanor, but we know what he is, and we know what he's not, and he's not what the left claims that he is. If you want safety for your family, if you want security for your future, if you want prosperity, if you want actual liberty and freedom, then Trump is the obvious choice here. And I hope RFK voters, supporters see this. I think, at least based on a lot of the text messages that I've gotten, a lot of the conversation and discussion about this, especially posts from RFK, not just supporters, but people who have actively campaigned for him for the last 18 months, it seems that they are understanding that the Democrat Party is broken. They cannot allow Kamala Harris to be president, and therefore they are on board with this alliance between Make America Healthy Again and Make America Great Again, and that it's going to be fabulous. So anybody who, if I just described you, if you're watching this and you're like, yes, that's me, I'm here now, a little skeptical, but also excited about this alliance, welcome. I think it's going to be the greatest political alliance, perhaps, in the history of our country. All right, we have a special guest joining us now. Jason Whitlock joins me now. Jason is, of course, the host of Fearless with Jason Whitlock right here on Blaze Media. Jason, good to see you.
Good to see you, Liz.
All right, Jason, what do you think this means? RFK Jr. endorsing Trump, but this is the nuance that a lot of people are ignoring. Not officially dropping out of the race himself. He's just sort of telling people in swing states to, instead of voting for him, to vote for Trump. Is this going to tip Trump over the edge? Is he going to win?
Is it going to tip him over the edge? I think it helps. I think it helps more than just at the ballot in terms of votes. He's a symbol now of what men need to do in terms of, hey, he's going against what his wife wants him to do, what many people in his family want him to do. And so when he made this announcement, I immediately thought of Matthew 10 and verses 34 through 36 in terms of like Jesus comes with a sword and he's going to set son against father, daughter against mother. There will be division when you choose a side. And so I think a lot of men are caught in the position that RFK was in, like wife, family, not on board with Trump support. And so I think this is a level of courage that other men need to emulate. That, you know, we have to stand for what we believe in, and if it causes strife within our family, and we think this is what God wants us to do. In his speech, I thought he spelled that out pretty clearly, that he feels like a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to do something about a medical crisis with young people that he believes in. And so he's pushing all of his chips into the table, into the middle of the table, and I hope other men and women as well, you know, follow his lead. We have to obey God and take some real risk here at this time, because we're living in a very unique time where all of our freedoms are in jeopardy. So hats off to RFK, and yeah, I think it's going to help Trump, but more importantly, I think he set a standard for other men to follow.
Yeah, that's actually a very interesting point. I haven't heard anybody make this point, but it reminds me, I was reading a study the other day that said, and this is a religious study, this actually didn't have to do with politics, but it said that when a husband converts, it was specifically converts to Catholicism, although I assume it also applies, or probably applies to Christianity. When a husband converts to Catholicism, 70% of the time, his wife also ultimately follows and converts to Catholicism, even if it's not immediately, as well as children from that marriage. And I thought, oh, that's very interesting. Like, it shows that this family structure and this dynamic within marriage where the man, and I know this is controversial to say, the man is the head of the household and the spiritual leader, really is bred into us innately, that when a man takes a courageous action, oftentimes his family follows. And I wonder if this demographic that the Trump campaign does struggle with, that Democrats are taking advantage of, which is women, specifically suburban women who vote often on the abortion issue. I wonder if your point, men voting for Trump because of RFK, and then this sort of marriage between Make America Great Again and Make America Healthy Again, if that's going to impact that specific demographic.
Yeah, I do, and I think it's a great marriage, because the message that RFK is carrying about young people and making them healthy again, it's going to resonate with women. And so who knows what's going to happen in his marriage? Who knows? This may be a bridge too far for his wife. It may be a bridge too far for his sister and other people in his family. But he's willing to live with those consequences. And that's why I say hats off to him. Obviously, I'm pro-marriage, pro-family, don't want to see that fall apart. But I'm more than pro-marriage and pro-family, I'm pro-God. And so the guy, if this is his calling, and that's what he feels like God has put on his heart, this health crisis that's going on with young people and children, and he has this one chance to make a difference, he has to live out that mission if he feels like that's what God wants him to do, and he'll deal with the consequences. But I think RFK is someone that will resonate with women, and particularly with women who either are married or want to be married. You know, I think some of these women that don't want to be married and think abortion is the most important thing, they may be unreachable. But I do think there are a lot of women that, you know, they may have thought one thing when they were younger, but looking at the results of the chaos and the stupidity that's overtaken America, and then you look over what's going on in the UK, I think people are starting to understand that there are consequences to matriarchal rulership and a society that's based on feelings, on satisfying everyone's feelings. That's you can't run an organized society based on feelings. It's got to be on something a little more grounded than just people's feelings, because, you know, right now, I feel like a sausage and egg McMuffin. I'm hoping that feeling goes away, because it's not a good feeling. It won't help me. It won't help make America healthy again. But anyway, we got to be grounded on something stronger than feelings.
Well, it does. Well, I mean, this is a feeling that I'm having right now, but it does feel like what you said, a once in a lifetime opportunity, though. I mean, we've been talking about, we all lived it through COVID. There were some of us who were kind of red-pilled on all of big pharma and the corruption of the FDA and the CDC prior to COVID, but it wasn't necessarily a mainstream feeling or belief or experience before that. It was just a specific demographic of people who maybe have children who were harmed by vaccines, or there is a demographic of women who are around my age in their 20s, 30s, or 40s who have been ignored, neglected, gaslit about autoimmune issues by big medicine because of its ties to big pharma. And so there are specific demographics who had experienced that, but I don't think until COVID, everybody in the country realized the depth of the corruption. And it's kind of demoralizing thinking, like, how do we fix this? How do we get rid of this? But I feel, and this, again, I know this is a feeling, but I do feel excited about the idea of Make America Healthy Again, marrying Make America Great Again, because I'm not sure even Trump was fully red-pilled on the corruption of big pharma, given his support for some of the vaccines. But now with RFK by his side, I'm like, yeah, let's get this done. Let's get rid of that.
I think it's going to open up a major conversation, because what has transpired with me just over the last 3 to 4 years since the scales have come off my eyes, I was an irresponsible man that would get in relationships and require women to get on birth control. And again, since the scales have come off my eyes and figure like, holy cow, there are severe consequences for women getting on birth control and what it does to their immune system and other things with them. And so I'm just RFK and what we've experienced the last 4 years. Yes, it's been hard and it's been difficult, and I wish we didn't have to go through it. But I do think in terms of opening our eyes to just how unhealthy we are and how unhealthy a lot of the habits we've been given and how much control Big Pharma has been given over what we think through their control of mainstream television and just everything else. This has been a process that we've needed to go through, and it's unfortunate that it took all of this to get us to start having these conversations. But to see RFK be a part of the Trump administration and to be able to advance these conversations even further, it is an exciting time. And it feels like, as down as we may feel sometimes, it's like help is on the way. Things are starting to go our direction.
Well, listen, I don't say this to sound hyperbolic, but we are living history right now. If you think about just this specific campaign cycle or election cycle alone, we had a sitting incumbent president who was so mentally senile that he's not even running the White House. We then had his opponent, President Trump, of course, who was the victim of an assassination attempt. Then because of that, we had the Democratic Party, or the powers that be in the Democratic Party, depose Joe Biden, stage a coup, install Kamala Harris. Then we have this, which might be the greatest political marriage that we have ever experienced, the greatest political alliance we've ever experienced in the United States, RFK and Donald Trump here. What are the Democrats going to do to counter this? Because staging a coup, deposing Joe Biden in response to the assassination of Donald Trump was like something we've never experienced before in the history of this country. It was a big deal, even if the media acted like it was totally normal. What do you think they're going to do now for this? Because this is a pretty big bump of momentum for Trump.
It is. Their strategy is so based in deception that it's hard to predict. I said this to Tucker Carlson last week, Liz, that just the other historic thing that's going on right now that we're not really talking about is that we don't have a president right now.
Yes.
When has that ever happened in the history of America? No one knows who's running the country. And they're trying to normalize that. They want us to kind of get used to that, hey, there really isn't a president. There's this group of puppet masters behind the scenes that tell presidents what to do. And that's kind of their message. It's like, don't worry about Kamala. Who cares if she's not qualified? She can read a teleprompter. The regime, the deep state, will tell her what to do, no different than what we've been doing for the last 6 months since Joe Biden stepped aside, and really since the last 3.5 years since Biden's been president. But it's now like completely obvious, like we don't have a president. Who's running the country? And they're basically saying, don't worry about it. Same people running it now. We'll be running it when Kamala's there, and the next election cycle we'll break a different glass ceiling, and someone else will get their turn at the wheel. It's crazy what we're living through. Not to make our time more important than any other time, but I just don't think we've seen this level of dysfunction and chaos just normalized.
At least not in our country. I mean, we forget that our country is relatively new by the standards of how long countries typically last. And this might be the craziest election cycle. I don't usually buy into the narrative that, oh, this is the most important election that we've ever experienced, because I actually think all of them are, because all of them lead to either a nation prospering or failing. But I don't think we've ever, dysfunction is the right word that you use, because I don't think that we've ever experienced this. I saw a number, by the way, yesterday. I think I was just reading articles, and I saw a number that said that Joe Biden has only been in the White House for like 6, 7, 8 days since he announced that he wasn't going to be on the ticket in November, that he's mostly been at his beach house. And it just confirmed to me, I mean, we reported on it at the time when it was reported. I think it was Charlie Kirk who first reported it, and he said, listen, Biden suffered a serious medical emergency in Las Vegas. They covered it up by saying that he had been diagnosed with COVID and was going to go into quarantine. But my bet, Jason, is that it was much more serious than was reported, and he wasn't just pushed aside. My guess is he is even more seriously incapacitated than he was just with his mental decline.
I don't think there's any doubt about that, and the fact that there should be 2 daily conversations going on, in my opinion, like who's running the United States of America right now, and who allowed someone to take a point-blank shot at Donald Trump. We have to fix those 2 deals. We got to figure out who's running the country and do something about it, and we have to figure out what agencies, FBI, CIA, who dropped the ball, who was perhaps in on the assassination attempt on our leading candidate for president. But instead, we spend a lot of time talking about joy. And literally, it was comical. The DNC, we have we're at the brink of World War III and nuclear conflict. And Oprah Winfrey shows up in Chicago to shout joy, and we're supposed to pretend like this was some amazing moment at the DNC, and this is like a serious campaign. And, it's basically the BET Awards meets the Academy Awards for a political function. It's just not serious. And I just hope that RFK and President Trump and what they're doing, that combination does sober some people up. Like, hey man, you don't have to like them, and yes, they're flawed, but at least they're serious people. No one's going to argue that RFK is not a serious person and that he's not well researched, the books he's written about COVID and the medical issues and all that other stuff. This is a serious person. Donald Trump, serious businessman, 4 years as our president, got us out of conflict. Russia wasn't misbehaving the way that it was. He's got a serious record. Liz, I tweeted this out, that just the past week was the final thing to push me. I've never voted because I've never really...
You've never voted?
No, I've never really believed in
What?
politics. Yeah, I'm spiritual solutions. But I registered to vote this weekend. I'm definitely going to vote. And it just comes down to, for me, the only way the January 6 people get out of prison is if Trump is elected. And the only way we potentially avoid World War III is if Trump is elected. Though, these are serious, serious consequences, and I can't sit on the sideline.
Well, first of all, I'm shocked to hear that you've never voted. Although I also have another good friend who works in this industry. I'm not going to say his name because he'd probably be super mad, who also doesn't vote. And it shocks me out of my mind that people wouldn't want to do that. I'm so glad that you're voting. Welcome. It's an incredibly powerful thing to be part of self-governance. That's what your vote counts for. Even as the left tries to dilute our votes and steal our votes, we don't want to give that up. So welcome to being part of the voting electorate. I am excited to see actually all the new voters that I think are going to be registering probably today, probably tomorrow, based on RFK and Trump's new alliance. Jason, thanks so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it. It's always good to talk to you.
Thank you, Liz.
Okay, it's just a very exciting time in American politics. I mean, I'm privileged to be part of this discussion. I think we all are. It's scary because there are scary implications if we don't make the right choice. But I feel, perhaps for the first time in this election cycle, some hope that this coalition between Donald Trump and RFK will propel Donald Trump over the edge. And I don't just mean over the edge of being able to win, but so far over the edge that the Democrats might not even be able to cheat their way into alleged victory here. I do want to make one other point here. There were some Trump supporters who expressed excitement the way that I did. Probably more Trump supporters expressed excitement about this coalition, but there were some Trump supporters who expressed skepticism, who said, well, RFK Jr is not conservative. And he's not. That's true. RFK Jr embraces some leftist positions, particularly on abortion. He doesn't think there should be any restrictions, or so he says, on abortion. He's pretty radical on environmentalism. And I'm not talking about we should be good stewards of the environment. Most of us believe that. I think all of us believe that, especially if we're conservative and Christian. But more Green New Deal style environmentalist regulations, globalist regulations. He's not conservative. That's a fair analysis of RFK. And there are some conservatives who are worried that he's going to pull Donald Trump away from conservative values and actually bring more leftist values into the White House. And to that, I would say, I'm not particularly concerned about that. And the reason why is I think that RFK, we are watching before our eyes, essentially the red pilling of RFK. He has for a long time been comfortable challenging the status quo. He's been comfortable being the target of media assaults on his character and his life's work. He has been comfortable rejecting a Democratic apparatus that, even though his father and his uncle are kind of the face of traditional Democrat Party-ism, it's no longer, the Democratic Party of today is no longer that same party. He's been comfortable pushing back against challenging assumptions, if you will. At the same time, he hasn't until now seen the depth of the corruption, not just of the deep state that killed his father and uncle, but in all of these different institutions that the Democratic Party has just, even once it's been exposed, the Democratic Party is totally fine with. And we're seeing him red pill. You know, obviously big food and big pharma. We've seen him red pill on globalism, the CIA, the FBI. It would not surprise me. And I try to stay away from political predictions, but this is one that I just see coming down the pipeline. It would not surprise me if RFK, instead of dragging Trump to the left on some of these issues, if he actually moves to the right. It would not surprise me if this man, even though just months ago he said he does not support any restrictions on abortion, which is an egregious position, it would not surprise me if he becomes more pro-life. Because it might be a political strategy, because the Democratic Party has always been the party, the pro-abortion party, that he does not want to turn off so many of those voters who are going to be willing to make the jump to vote for a coalition, a unity ticket between RFK and Donald Trump. We may see the full red pilling of RFK Jr. once he has been fully inculcated into the Make America Great Again movement. I could be wrong, but this is what I see. This is what I see coming. And so I don't share the concerns of conservatives who say, well, he's mostly a leftist. Do we really want him part of the Trump administration? Well, in some areas, yes. Yes, I do. All right, much more to talk about in the days to come. Be sure you subscribe on YouTube, youtube.com/Liz Wheeler. Click that subscribe button. Click the bell so that I can notify you every time we drop a new episode in case YouTube decides not to notify you. Also, go to Apple Podcasts and Spotify, search The Liz Wheeler Show. Click subscribe over there. Leave me a 5-star review. I greatly appreciate it. And I do read all of your guys' reviews, so just so you know, your words are being read. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. I'm Liz Wheeler. This is The Liz Wheeler Show.